Welcome, everyone, to our panel on bioconvergence, breaking down silos and disruptive innovation. My name is Marc Alcser, and I'm a corporate partner and the chair of the Life Sciences Group at Stradling Law, based in Orange County. We provide legal representation to private and public companies, mostly in the life sciences space in all aspects of their life cycles. I'm excited to be with you today to moderate this panel. First, I'd like to introduce each of the experts on the panel and ask them to provide a brief summary of their background. So we'll start with Assaf here on my left.
Hi, good morning. My name is Assaf Bia. I'm running two funds which are based in Israel called Sanara Ventures and Sanara Capital. Sanara Ventures started as a joint venture of Philips and Teva Pharmaceutical, actually investing seed stage technologies in digital health, medical devices, and bioconvergence. And as of 2 years ago, I set up Sanara Capital, a post-incubation fund also with Philips, Teva, and other strategics and family offices to do A rounds and B rounds post-incubation companies. We did 6 investments so far, one of which I would like to elaborate. It's going to be a company called Nanodrops for ophthalmology, which is a great example of bioconvergence. A bit of myself, I'm also the chairman of the Israeli Life Science Board of the Export Institute, trying to increase the export out of Israel of about $10 billion. This is including therapeutics and biotech and devices. I've been a consultant to the World Bank, to the venture capital team of the World Bank, and did a few other things. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Arian Tom. I'm the founder and managing partner at Kaleida Capital, where we invest in early-stage neurotechnology companies. A little background on myself. I'm originally trained as a materials engineer, did my training at Stanford University, and ultimately developed a lot of novel neural interfaces, applying a lot of information and knowledge about materials to create new types of brain-computer interfaces and neuroimaging technologies.
Hi everyone, it's nice to be here. My name is Suraj Mudichintala. I'm here representing Action Potential Venture Capital. We are a single LP fund backed by GlaxoSmithKline. The origin of the fund was in neuromodulation, so looking at actually bioconvergence from a lens of both neuroscience as well as material sciences. The fund's been around for 10 years, and we have been investing roughly $5 to $10 million checks in Series A through C companies, call it. And in terms of my background, quickly, predominantly a business background, started my career in management consulting and have been investing in healthcare technologies for about 5 years now.
Thanks, Suraj, and the rest of the panel here. So I guess the first thing diving into this, and we'll start off with you, Assaf, is what is bioconvergence and what is it really solving for?
Well, bioconvergence, as it sounds, the convergence of, it's not just biology or wet biology for that matter, it's the convergence or multidisciplinary convergence of another domain, which should be, to some extent, engineering related, could be software engineering, could be material science, could be anything that has to do with the miniaturizing electronics component, could be the 3D printing of organs. But it's not just the biotech concept. It's not just developing a molecule or an antibody. And I assume we shall also talk about the outcome, I mean, the benefits of that in terms of addressing truly needs whereby, biology within itself would not be able to solve. So that multidisciplinary approach and the convergence of those two disciplines, by the way, create fascinating business models and fascinating parameters for us as venture capitalists to look into those companies and try to understand what should we duplicating, should we just be duplicating again and again the same models or not. But I think the beauty in bioconvergence is that resolving some of the most challenging domains within healthcare, let it be drug delivery, let it be the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier, for that matter, with new technologies to do so, which we were not able to do so for decades and decades. Bioconvergence may allow those to happen finally.
Yeah, I think really important point there too on the business models. I think it's bioconvergence not necessarily strictly related to developing a new product, but what comes out of that, right? I think there are examples of companies that have been able to influence the operating costs and provide better bottom line margins because they're able to have a more efficient sales force as a result of bioconvergence. Whether that's, we have a company in our portfolio called Saluda Medical that actually eliminates the need for titrating spinal cord stimulation by virtue of bioconvergence. And I think it gets really interesting, right? We're predominantly med tech people in this room, and I think when you look at companies that are now starting to leverage drug models, leveraging J codes for reimbursement, getting recurring payments. I think it's fascinating that it's not just the technology and the product. I think it permeates the organization across business functions.
Great. And so, Suraj, following up on that, maybe describe some of the promising technologies that you're working on. And stepping back, I guess, one step back from there, around what year or time zone did bioconvergence start to become something that people were pursuing?
Yeah, from a time zone perspective, I think bioconvergence, to me, it's really just the changing of how teams feel in terms of, you now have computer scientists that may have at one point been working on navigating cars, but are now working on navigating vessels in the body. And so I think there's no like one specific time in which kind of these disciplines have started to intersect. We think it's been as early as neuromodulation, which was 20, 30 years ago, and now the factors that have kind of come together to enable next generation neuromodulation platforms is just one example. In terms of other applications that I think are really interesting, we look at neurotech and some of the things going on with transcranial magnetic stimulation or other modalities of electrical therapeutics. Assaf, you had mentioned kind of some of the limitations of molecular medicines as it relates to penetrating the blood-brain barrier. I think that's really interesting insofar as thinking of neuro diseases as circuitry imbalances as opposed to chemical imbalances. Pharma has been throwing kind of molecular medicines at neurology for who knows how long now. And take Alzheimer's, for example, with a 99.7% failure rate of getting a drug to the clinic. If you actually look at some of the most recent science, it's actually changes in temporal activation of different mode networks in the CNS that could be causing Alzheimer's or could be causing various kind of, whether it's depression, et cetera. I think those are all really interesting applications, and I think you could really build a fund around that thesis. Other applications, I think, coming from a background where we have GlaxoSmithKline as our single LP, we think about kind of value creation across the spectrum of therapeutic development. So you talk about drug development, translation, and then kind of actually deploying therapies in the clinic. I think bioconvergence can kind of enable technologies, whether that's precision biomarkers or any types of computationally driven platforms to enable better therapeutic development, but also enable biomarkers for patient selection, stratification, and de-risking the ability of bringing a drug to market. We have a company in our portfolio, OncAI, that actually uses CT scans and a deep learning model in order to better triage treatment patterns for late-stage lung cancer patients. Now, in the clinic, that could be used as a precision diagnostic, but we think that there's actually a huge opportunity in pharma where you can now look at label expansion opportunities for existing drugs and actually develop biomarkers that can really blow up the value of drugs that are second or third line therapy that exist today. And so I think applications that look across that entire value chain of pharma could be really interesting as well.
And Ariane, what are you working on, or what are you looking at in your fund?
Yeah, so great comments there. So what we look at are enabling tools for precision neuroscience, and this can really span the gamut, but in this conversation, some of the things that we're looking at are ways that novel biomarkers can be measured and evaluated, either with very high precision, very high resolution. And the idea and the concept of bringing these types of characterization tools to biology is not necessarily new, but it's also something that we believe that large industry players are beginning to start to appreciate more and more and more. I think that the reason why we're having this conversation today is to talk about silos in innovation and how those are starting to break down. And I think that to Suraj's point, being able to define and measure and monitor how certain therapeutic changes are happening tailored to individuals is super important and will continue to emerge.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody, from the little fire alarm diversion there. So we were talking about pharma development and how bioconvergence kind of helps out in that process and makes it faster, more efficient, more targeted, and all of those various items. The next question I had, though, was going back, Assaf, in terms of these early stage companies that are developing or focused on doing bioconvergence technologies. What kind of unique challenges do they face in this marketplace?
Yeah, I think that's the main thing for and convergence being repeatedly stated again and again. But this is exactly where we are. I think all of us encounter that. First of all, it's the convergence of those technologies. So there's unique know-how that should be integrated into something which will work, into a specific use case, into something that eventually will make such a disruption that it will be worthwhile to invest in that. But more than that, there will be a convergence of the people, of the VP of clinical, VP of BizDev, the CEOs, VP of R&D. This, what turned out to be, and also in Israel, one of the reasons that the Israeli Innovation Authority, the government of Israel has decided to prioritize bioconvergence is because of that. We have those combinations of people with different expertise from the high-tech industry converging into the biotech industry. And that is a great barrier to cross because otherwise you may stumble in, you may deploy $5, $10, $15 million and then find yourself within 3 or 4 years that you have to repeat it all over again because of the unique convergence and unique disciplines of those different verticals, different multidisciplinary approach. Thirdly would be, I think, the fact that basically the bioconvergence eventually it is a result, it is the core technology within certain technologies. So bioconvergence eventually may come to be a company like one that we have in Israel called MeMed, which is basically looking to distinguish between bacteria and viruses. But it's not just the software component and it's not just the biology component. It's eventually the use case. The use case, what is the advantage? How you disrupt the market, if you can disrupt the market with the unique technology. Eventually, the core technology doesn't mean anything, bioconvergence or not bioconvergence. It has to be translated to a specific, unique use case with a unique and justified enough business model to overcome those heavily investing in the convergence, into the know-how, into the discipline, and translate it into unique enough business models in order to overcome.
Yeah, adding on to that, I think that's also a challenge for a lot of companies and investors alike in being able to discern really what the valuation comp should be and in attaching that to their revenue generation model. Imagine an implanted device, piece of hardware that is actively collecting a lot of data and information that are very important biomarkers for diagnostics purposes. Furthermore, these same biomarkers can be used in a feedback loop, to be able to stimulate and tailor and tune the parameters of that stimulation in real time to a patient. Now, what kind of company is this? Is it a medical device company? Is it a diagnostics company? Or is it a therapeutics company? And founders, need to be able to articulate this type of thing, which oftentimes this term platform technology has kind of been used quite a bit. But what happens is that the challenge from their perspective is to be able to get the right funders in the room who can understand that they should be seeing this technology through multiple perspectives and be able to evaluate what the commercial impact could be, but using a combination. And so again, the convergence of these different kinds of business models can emerge, but sometimes because the industry is so siloed and it's like, are you a therapeutics company or not? Are you a diagnostics company or not? Medical device or not? And I think that serves to hurt innovation at times. And so that's really what we are looking for, is our early stage companies that have IP that can be leveraged in multiple dimensions. But really what our role as investors is to help the teams really figure out what they need to do to build to the best success possible to get this into the market. And I think that really requires one to be open-minded and be open to the interdisciplinary nature of this.
Yeah, I think the fundamental challenge with our healthcare system is that it does not necessarily reward innovation. If you think about the regulatory barriers in conjunction with the need to get unique codes, in the need to develop payment that justifies investment, these are fundamentally things that in the product development process are in misalignment. And that is really challenging for investors who are looking to both be on the front edge of technology without necessarily being on the bleeding edge of technology, where you run into barriers that make early stage investments infeasible in terms of the return profiles based on the amount of capital required to set up the appropriate reimbursement infrastructure if it is a proper device company, or figure ways to navigate the regulatory complexities with efficiency. I think that to me is the big challenge. I mean, I think for 90% of the companies that we look at, those are the big challenges. In terms of how do you circumvent those challenges, I think it's a little bit of, you've got to kind of take these small incremental steps, and have companies that are unafraid to take those risks and build a playbook for others to follow suit. I think one good example is, we have a company in our portfolio called Kaleida. It's a wearable wrist-worn product that is a neuromodulation device, kind of had to go through a bunch of novel pathways, going through the DME, kind of going through securing payment in a market for essential tremor, which is a massive market, and payers are, not willing to back a payment level because of the implications on the cost budgets that may have. And so I think, now that company has been able to secure coverage and payment at a rate that justifies the business model, I think we're going to start to see a lot more wearable devices, wearable neuromodulation, given the success of that company. So it's going to be a little bit of a stepwise change, I think. But the industry is moving in the direction, and I think that entrepreneurs are learning from some of these stories.
And in some cases, I hope it's not going to be incremental. So for that matter, the technology itself may be disruptive. Even the example that I've been given before, I don't know if you guys were able to listen to this company that we invested in. We just did now an co-investment with one of the largest strategic players in the ophthalmology space, our company called Nanodrop. So the idea is basically then again to put a laser flash to create a pattern on your cornea, then to put a drop, basically, and you're good to go without glasses and lenses, for like 3 or 4 months. Would people come back to that service? I think people would eventually. We did a market survey. Looks quite fascinating. By the way, we believe it could be $1 billion company. But then again, the beauty of that technology is the biology and the physics converging into a unique disruptive solution for not using glasses. I'm not talking about myopia and presbyopia, in China and other places whereby, the government is launching new programs just to solve those issues. Nonetheless, if we are looking into a B2C model where the customers will come back every 3 or 4 months, get used to go to CVS Optics, sit on a chair, get a laser flash, do a drop in your eyes, and then come back after 3 or 4 months, hopefully they would, like a bit like a Botox treatment, those who would like to stay away from from using glasses, like myself every now and then, even though those are new. So this is something that I think really we need to, as going back to an amazing point that you've mentioned, is the fact that we need to make sure that we set up those business model and the reimbursement or out-of-pocket payment in line with what the service should be justifying. In some cases, this will disrupt the marketplace. And I'm not talking necessarily about the use cases, inpatients and whatever, but rather those who may touch the consumer. Definitely, there will be major challenges with the in-hospital settings and others in clinic settings, of course. But this is something that reimbursement will play along with it as well.
Reimbursement's always a big issue, and certainly that kind of leads into the next question that I had for the panel here is, looking forward, what kind of what would help most between governments and academia and the industry in kind of furthering this whole bioconvergence movement, let's call it?
Yeah, I can take a stab. I mean, I think, and we've talked about it a little bit already. I think from the earliest stages, having all of these kind of issues in mind as you develop a product, and realize that, for example, even in things like your IP filings, for example, you need to be very specific on the language of what exactly your product does. Otherwise, 5 years down the line, when you go and look for setting a payment level, you may actually be rejected because your device looks more like a TENS unit than a unit that actually modulates a specific biomarker. And that actually makes a huge difference. But I think it's really challenging for people in early, whether it's academia or just really early stage entrepreneurs, to kind of have that roadmap set out from the beginning. And I think that's really important. I think from a regulatory body perspective, I think FDA's, has been trying to come out with a variety of different programs to help early stage entrepreneurs. I think that TAP program was one that came out recently. I think breakthrough designation and kind of the impact that that's now going to have in terms of payment with CMS is helpful, and I think all these things are percolating, but they're not quite at the stage that they could really reduce the time to get to market. So I think more work needs to be done there as well. But I think to me, over the last 5 years, it does feel like things are moving in the right direction from a systematic buy-in perspective for all things bioconvergence.
I think to some extent, we as an industry, we should aim at least for setting up new gold standards. Even the example that I've been using before, this other company that I've mentioned, MeMade, basically whether you'd like to give antibiotics to patients, if this is viruses or germ, that decision, and it's a global challenge for various diseases that we need to know right here on the spot in clinics and other places if you want to give your child antibiotics or not. This is something that eventually, once those technologies will step into the marketplace, we can define a new benchmark, a new gold standard for, you have to take one or two, and then the industry may get along and basically set a new standard for, not just on the diagnostic side, but rather on other issues. I think the more we see those, the more we adopt those, eventually they even could define a new benchmarks and best practices for us to adopt.
Great, thanks. So we talked a lot about, I guess, what you guys are working on now. Let's kind of look into the future, and to close out this panel, what do you think, and we'll start with Ariane, what do you think is the biggest growth area or the biggest opportunity within this, let's call it an industry, just for the purpose of the panel?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm personally very bullish about neurotechnology and precision neuroscience. Really, what we've witnessed over the last decade, especially with the input of the BRAIN Initiative, which pushed about $4 billion in non-dilutive grant funding into translational neurotechnologies, is the advancement of a lot of the hardware. And so our access to the brain and to neural tissue is now, we're now entering this phase where the advent of the combination of the developments in microelectronics, neuroimaging, et cetera, combined with our ability to mine that data with software and machine learning, I think that convergence is going to be something really exciting. You can imagine, just as with the iPhone that we had, and then the apps and the App Store that was built on top of that to enable a lot of different products and services that we never had before. We believe that this could also be a future avenue in terms of hardware that will not only have implications in the healthcare system and life sciences, but also in consumer tech and defense tech.
even though the examples that I've been using were a little bit different, but I'm quite bullish on truly on biology and deep tech, or biology and AI, to the extent that we've been repeatedly saying AI but in terms of oncology, we have a company called Ondo Cipher, which is a unique, fascinating technology, which is looking into kind of a computational biology, looking into the silent mutations, hidden mutations, which are not being observed enough and could actually bring about indication expansion to pharma companies. We can save millions of people if that works. So I believe that there's so much out there in the AI component and into biology that eventually the insightful insights that we start to see will materialize into significant amounts of both therapeutics as well as diagnostic tools, as well as printing of organs and others.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much more to add. I think I think we're learning a lot about human biology through AI. I think neuroscience is absolutely the frontier. There's so much we don't know and so much we're uncovering. Even in the last 5 years, it feels like there have been massive leaps in understanding of the default mode networks and the brain in general. And so I think it's a really exciting time to be at this intersection. And I look forward to the future.
Awesome, thanks very much. So in recap, Bioconvergence has a lot of opportunity going forward, huge market opportunities, lots of different applications. I'd like to thank the audience for joining us today, and as well as LSI for putting on this amazing conference, and of course my esteemed panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.